Hello, and welcome to Career Landscapes, a peek into professional lives. I'm your host, Felicity Minch, and co-founder of One Voice for Change. Today, we have the joy of speaking with Danielle DeMott, executive chef at Masters Restaurant, located at the Colorado National Golf Club in Erie, Colorado. So I'd like to take a moment and read her bio. Danielle was born and raised in Colorado. Her family has been in the state for over 100 years. She went into the Pro Start program in high school and fell in love with cooking. Danielle then went to Johnson and Wales and received her associate's degree in culinary arts and her bachelor degree in business management. Her career has been chiefly through golf courses and country clubs. She worked at Cherry Hills Country Club during the BMW Championship, the grand reopening of Columbine Country Club, Pinehurst Country Club, and Masters at Colorado National. She has also been contracted to do private chef work as well. Danielle, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time for One Voice for Change and for the students, and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, can you just tell us a little bit about your career now, what you do? I know you're at Masters Restaurant. Yeah, tell us a little bit about your life.
I think that for the career portion of it, what people don't quite understand about chef is not only do you cook and you kind of build and create, but you also have to work on being a good manager as well. So you have to build a team and teach a team and really learn how to work with that. There's ordering and food costing, that kind of a thing. So there's a lot more business aspect that goes into the title of chef than just cooking. But I started as your average prep person and just kind of worked my way up over years and kind of fighting my way through different stations and stuff. I will say that the landscape of food has changed dramatically in the last 10 years since from when I started. And we're definitely breaking out of the boys club mentality, which is good, but it's very polarizing to see the very different aspects from when I started to now.
What are some of the major differences? I mean, in the 10 years, what have you seen?
I feel like starting in this industry, even though I was working on my degree and I was applying at many, many places, it was super hard to get your foot in the door,
Hmm.
even at minimum wage. It was, well, you have no experience and you don't have a degree. Why should we hire you at this minimum wage prep job position? And it was just mind blowing to me that I couldn't get my foot in the door. And then somehow I was able to get my foot in the door at Cherry Hills Country Club. And that's kind of where I sunk my teeth in, so to speak. And that's kind of why I stayed with the country club aspect as long as I have in the golf course area, because each little branch is definitely different. But now it's kind of, you know, it's harder to even find people that would be interested in doing it. So it's much more of a struggle to find that staffing, where before it seemed like it was even hard to just get anywhere.
Oh, interesting. Was it just because of your age and lack of experience, or um,
I think it was a mixture of three, because like I said, the boys club mentality was is still kind of there, but not as bad as it used to be. But I had being a girl going against me. I had being young and, the lack of experience for sure. But I wanted to push forward because I was like, please just give me that shot because I want you to know that I want it and I want to learn
yeah,
and I want to grow. And this career is definitely a labor of love and a passion.
yeah, yeah. That's just beautiful to hear because you had that determination and you didn't give up. And same with the guitar world. I was one of the few female classical guitarists. And when I started to teach, I was going door to door asking if I could teach at music stores. Back then, you taught at a music store, and everyone said no. And you just keep trying and you keep going, and somebody will believe in you. Yeah, yeah. I
Mhm.
admire your determination. That's wonderful. So, how old were you when you started culinary school?
18,
Oh,
straight
okay.
out of high school. So
Okay. Oh, great. Oh, yeah. You were out of high school, not during high school. Do you?
I did Pro Start in high school, which was like the high school program, but that teacher, her name was Miss June, and she knew a lot of the people at the culinary schools,
Mhm.
and she was able to get you connected with those kinds of people, and it was really great as a, step in the right direction and to also really test if it was right for you.
Wonderful. And where did you go to high school?
I went to Mountain Range.
Oh, great, great. And speaking of culinary school, what does culinary school achieve in the workplace? I mean,
So culinary school is definitely not going to give you all of the answers and make you the top pro in the workplace, but it's going to give you that fundamental basics to get you going quicker. And I find that if you work in the workplace and you can go to culinary school at the same time, you're going to advance a lot quicker than someone who does one versus the other. It's kind of one of those things where it gets you your food safety and your sanitation kind of things down, your basic skill sets and your points and your that background knowledge that you can kind of pull on in a situation where you might be put into with maybe you don't get a recipe from the chef, or maybe you have to make something on the fly and really quick because oh no, something has happened and you need to do it really fast. It kind of just gives you that skill set to fall back on. And I think when you're working and you're learning at the same time, it gives you that power to just like really move forward quicker with those, because all of cooking is genuinely repetition and practice.
right, right. Same with music, same with so many things. Um, yes, and how did you become passionate about cooking? Was this something you've always loved? Did you dabble with it when you were a kid? Did you, or is it just an inspiration that hit you during Pro Start?
I would say, there's a little of, grandmas are always the motivation for most chefs. Every chef I've ever talked to said that grandma is a big part of it. Um, I think part of that was there. And then I think ProStart just kind of solidified it from hobby status into, wow, this could really be what I get to do every day. And I would really enjoy that.
That's neat. And what do you think the future of the culinary field is? I mean, I'm thinking of artificial intelligence and robots, and um, where do you see the industry going in 5 or 10 years?
I think just kind of speaking from my own experiences and kind of from just other chefs that I know and I've talked to, I think a lot of us think that if things keep going the way they're going, that fast casual is going to be the dominant winner because fast food is genuinely striven away from, no offense, but a lack of really good customer service in any way, shape, or form. It's gotten to the point where it's been really expensive for not a lot of quality. And I think that if AI would take over, it would be in the fast food industry because that's where I think they would cut those labor costs to get those prices down if they're going to survive.
Right.
Because their brand recognition isn't really going to last in the way that I think that they want it to. Your standard chain restaurants, I think, are kind of also dwindling because, again, they're just not that fabulous thing you're looking for anymore. And a lot of people are going to school and having multiple jobs, and they got a lot of things to do. And that fast casuals, that elevated, nicer kind of aspect, while hitting that bang for your buck that the fast food department's kind of failing at. But you don't have to necessarily spend so much resources in like a finer customer service status.
Mhm.
I do think that fine dining is also going to kind of dwindle back a little bit, maybe into just major cities, because it's just so expensive to keep those things going in the direction that they're going.
Interesting. Is there a is there a place in the United States that's the highest? I guess it would be New York and Los Angeles would have the most top quality chefs and the fanciest restaurants. But what other places are there places around the United States um, that have those high-end chefs?
I would say a lot of your really famous like capital cities would probably be what you're looking for. Washington D.C. is really big. Uh, Louisiana as a whole is really much more intense of a place to be because you've got that whole Cajun Creole aspect. Miami's really huge. Seattle, I've heard some things kind of stirring in that. Colorado is starting to kind of get that footing with the Michelin stars actually moving here last year, because before we had no Michelin visits whatsoever, which I find interesting because the Food Network is actually based in Denver. Uh,
Oh,
but yeah, I think that it's going to be mostly those major cities that would be kind of like those big hubs of everything. But there's always those little gems in every place that you go.
mhm, exactly. And what do you think what opportunities are there if I mean, for example, if a young person walked into Master's Restaurant, you would probably look at them and take them under your wing, perhaps.
I personally like to kind of do the opposite of what happened to me, where I was shut off by so many walls and not really given those chances. And I really do like to extend those chances because I had a chef in culinary school that said, she would rather not, she would rather hire the person that knew nothing and had a great attitude to learn versus the person that had a terrible attitude and knew everything.
Yeah, yeah, that is so true in so many ways. Um, yeah, and I've got some students that wanted to ask you some questions. And one student, age 14, asked, do you enjoy cooking as much as you did before you became a chef?
I would say yes, especially in the professional field, but where it dwindled a little bit was at home. Because a lot of people think that chefs are going to create a bunch at home too, but it's like any job. If you had someone who is an IT person, they're not going to want to spend 10 hours of their day at work and then come home and do more IT stuff
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
still do some, but that's not as much fun. And you also start to learn the differences between home cooking and professional cooking are very great. Professional cooking, you're doing things in giant batches. You're making 5 gallons of something, and it becomes a lot more difficult to cook at home because you have to kind of scale everything back. And then
Mhm.
you also forget that you don't have a lovely dishwasher to clean up for you.
Oh, that's funny. And another student asked, he's age 13, how do you get into culinary school? How old do you have to be to go to culinary school?
Now, the age thing, I'm not quite so sure on because I know that there are things at like community centers that you can kind of get your foot in the door. I know that there are things like Pro Start and more in tech in some of the high schools that kind of get you sort of started into stepping into that industry and stuff. But I would say probably around 18 and right after high school would probably be where you would find the easiest entry into that.
Mhm. Right. And like you said, it's great to have a business background too. That's probably
Mhm.
important for a business. And another student asked, age 16, is it the chef who decides all the items on a menu, or is it the owner of the restaurant?
So that one will be a little bit different from place to place.
Huh.
So if you're in something that's kind of franchised, it's going to be more from the franchisee's point of view. Maybe some of them would have like a weekly special that you get a little bit more creativity with. Same thing kind of with hotels and certain restaurants, especially if they've got a winning menu that everyone always comes for, they tend not to change it up so much. But I think that's kind of why I've stuck with country clubs as long as I have because there is a lot more creativity in the chef and the chef's staff.
Huh. Oh, that's neat. So you kind of are in charge of what goes on the menu.
There are some that are kind of locked in forever because they're just, those fan favorites that I'm sure I'd be met with pitchforks and fire if I ever got rid of. Um, but there's definitely a lot of fun to still be had too with other pieces. You kind of learn hey, these ones are our solid foundation and they're probably not going to go away. But then you also have the ones where you're like, well, this one didn't do very great. So let's try something new and try something seasonal and bring something maybe a little bit more on trend into the aspect of everything.
Mhm. And do you enjoy working with local farms, the local farms in the area, or is that something that the restaurant does not do? Or does it depend on the restaurant?
It kind of depends on the restaurant. If you look for a farm to table, then they're really heavily into that local portion of it. You can still do it outside of that, but sometimes with certain groups and franchises, or like if you think of hotels,
Mhm.
hotels want to be able to control costs as much as they can coast to coast. So it becomes really difficult to do that farming aspect because it's harder for them to control costs
Right.
evenly across the board. So your more individually owned places or those kinds of farms to tables have more ability to do those things. When I was at most of the country clubs, I kind of was able to do a little bit of a half and half. Or there's companies that you can reach out to that kind of are that middle purveyor in that step where they do all the local purveying and they sell directly to you. So you're not going, to 4 or 5 different farms to find what you need.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you. And then another question was, uh, did you cook a lot when you were a kid? And did your parents help you?
I think this is where I'll differ from a lot of people, or, well, it's kind of like a 50-50 split from who I've talked to. You're going to have that group of chefs that cooked a lot at home, cooked a lot with their parents and their families, and that's kind of that driving force for them. And don't get me wrong, I love my mom to death, but she was not the greatest at it. And we ate out a lot. So I think for me, it was kind of the opposite of I didn't really get to, and I wanted to kind of figure it out for myself because it just wasn't something we did all the time. And then kind of always seeing the end product at a restaurant was kind of also neat to then be like, oh, cool. Now I know all the steps and all the things I can do to get to that end product.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, because yeah, naturally, I would think you would start cooking when you were 5 or 6 and baking cookies and all that kind of stuff. So you have an interesting story. And what keeps you passionate about cooking? Does it ever get boring, or do you ever need a break, or what keeps you motivated and passionate as a chef?
I would say there have been moments where it's gotten kind of boring, like we haven't changed up the menu in a while, or I've been stuck on the same station for probably a little too long. But I think what kind of helped motivate me, especially when I first started, was like I said, there was that boys club mentality. I remember the first chef I had, I asked, can I start learning another station? And he said, if you want to learn it, you're going to fight for it and you're going to do it yourself. So I started to do that. And it became kind of this really rewarding challenge to achieve, to then push myself while still doing what I was normally doing into, okay, how does the person on the salad station make every salad? And then it came to a point where, oh, darn, the salad person's out for an emergency or they're out sick. Who do we put on the station? And I'd be like, me, give me that shot. And I would be able to be put on it, be able to show that I knew what I was doing and that I did push myself and learn. And then before I knew it, I became what's called chef de tournade. And it's
Okay.
kind of translates into almost like emergency relief chef. And then what I got to do was work everybody's station on their day off. So I was always rotating around all the stations. So one day I'd be saute, one day I'd be grill, one day I'd be salads, one day I'd be appetizers. And it gave me that, oh, cool. At least it's a little bit different every single day.
Mhm.
Now they're going to run into people in the industry who only want to work one station. That's their only station. They've been on that station for 20 years. And that's okay. It takes all types of people to run a ship.
Right, right, interesting. And what are the challenges? What are some of the, I mean, other than the good old boys club, um, back then, what challenges are there in the food industry, or what challenges do you face?
I feel like a lot of the challenges that I face now is definitely staffing and finding the people that are passionate and driven.
Mhm.
Because you find a lot of people that get into it and they think it's going to be really easy and it's just that whatever kind of job, and then they get, lack of a better term, get their butts kicked, and they're like, oh wow, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. And so it's just kind of hard to find those people who understand that kind of aspect. But it's a lot of repetition. You get kind of frustrated at points because you're like, man, why can't I get this one thing down? Why am I having so many struggles with this? But you just kind of got to keep sticking with it until you get that repetition in. And then before you know it, you're like, cool, this thing that used to drive me crazy, I can do in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, good, good. And one other kid asked the question, and she's quite young. Have you ever caught a kitchen on fire? Has there ever been a fire? I laughed when she asked this.
Well, it wasn't like the most aggressive fire you would think of, but there was a time when one of the guys I was working with did knock a liquor bottle that we used for a specific dish onto what's called a flat top. It's that really flat griddle kind of thing. And it luckily the glass in the bottle didn't break, but it did spill and it just lit everything into a really big good inferno for a few seconds. But outside of that, I haven't seen anything as aggressive.
Well, you must learn how to put out fires. I mean, there must be emergency fire extinguishers and all in the
And that's
kitchen.
kind of where that culinary school piece comes in because they teach you those safety kind of things, which is really, really great. But I am a big proponent of teaching people safety also in the kitchen. At the country clubs, I was usually the safety representative for the kitchen. But the best thing you can do for any kind of grease fire is if you have salt or baking soda and just smother it and take out the oxygen.
Interesting. Thanks. Oh, that's wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about being a chef and just I think it would be a wonderful joy to be a chef, but I think somebody has to have that passion and that uh
Yeah, for sure the passion has to be part of it. You have to really have that interest in it. And you kind of, one of the things I like to tell people is kind of get the celebrity chef out of your head because they they edit a lot of that and they play up a lot of drama and they don't show you all of the pieces to it. And yeah, your celebrity chefs have their chops, but to be realistic, there's so many chefs that just aren't that way. And to think that you're going to be the next Gordon Ramsay or whatever it may be, eh, it might not be exactly what you think. And to be honest, I think if you find the passion in it and you want to create, then do what's right for you and don't try to be the next, insert celebrity chef here. Be the chef that you would like to be.
Great, great advice. And also, what food do you enjoy cooking the most? Are you big into spices? Are you what do you love personally to cook?
I'm gonna say it's gonna sound weird, but a little bit everything, right? Because like I said, you get a little bit bored with your standard. Oh, I've done these ones before. I've done these, and you're gonna try something, and you're gonna start rotating through different stuff. But if I had to pick one item specifically, is spanakopita. I don't know what it is about it, but I just find it mostly relaxing, and nobody ever wanted to do it because it involved phyllo dough, which is a lot of layers,
Mhm.
and I just enjoyed making it.
Oh, phyllo dough is wonderful to work with. It takes time, but there's some great dishes with phyllo dough. I've done some Greek dishes with phyllo dough that's just incredible. So absolutely delicious. Yeah.
I think they're like that's also kind of where you split on chef mentalities again too. There's some chefs that are very strictly one kind of cuisine or, you know, maybe, Latin or Hispanic cuisines just really what they grew up with and it's what their passion lies in. And then you've got the other ones that are like, let's try anything and everything because they don't have that specific one that they hold on to as tightly.
Right. Right. Interesting. Well, thank you. If there's anything else, but I close every interview with three questions. If you're ready for these questions, I'd love to ask you, what is one piece of advice you would give to young people today?
I think one piece of advice that I would give, and it's going to probably sound really off kilter, is retirement fund. Start a retirement fund now. Compound interest is your best friend.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. No, kids need to have that financial knowledge at a young age. at a tremendously young age. I started with a piggy bank. My dad would pay me a nickel to go to the post office. I grew up in a little village in New Mexico, and I had to walk quite a ways to the post office. And my dad worked all day. And back then they didn't have 24-hour entrance to the post office. So I would go at a young age. But for a reward, dad gave me a nickel. So I earned 25 cents a week. And on Saturdays, I would pull one nickel out, and my best friend and I would go to this little store and buy candy. A nickel bought a fair amount of candy back then. So I saved 20 cents and spent a nickel. And the bank account that I started in New Mexico, I still have that bank account. And it started with, I think it was about $6 with a bunch of nickels. And yeah, kids need that financial knowledge. Thank you for that. I love that answer. Second question, what gives you hope for the future?
I think for me, it's just the possibility that there's always some other avenue to take.
Mhm.
Because, for me, actually, the start of last year, I did get laid off because they were going through a process of selling. They were thinking of selling the business itself, and then they ended up not doing that. And then I found Masters, and I really fell in love with it. And there's always just kind of even though it might be kind of sad at a moment, there's always something down another avenue that you could go, and you're going to learn something new. And I think just that hope that keeps me going is that I'm always going to learn something. If I keep myself open to learning something, then there's going to be another avenue to take somewhere down the road.
Great, great. And my last question, who inspires you?
I would probably say the biggest inspiration in my life would be my father. He had his own tougher upbringing, and he just kept pushing and going, and he made mistakes and he kept trying, and he's always just been he didn't sugarcoat anything as a kid. He'd just tell me. And it's just been kind of one of those, like, well, if someone like my dad can go through all those sorts of hardships and make it out and be where he's at and be happy, then why can't I?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I just want to thank you. Is there anything in closing you'd like to say, or did I miss anything, or anything that you'd like to add to the?
I think the only thing I could just kind of closingly say is, if you're wondering about food, get out there and just try it. You're at a perfect age to find, even if it might not be a fine dining restaurant, some form of food involved place to work at. And that door and that opportunity is really open for you. So if you're kind of thinking about it, dabble in it. It's okay if it doesn't work out. So you're young enough that it's like there's always that chance to just try it out. If it's not for you, great. If it's not, and it is for you, fabulous, even better.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Great advice. Well, thank you for your time, Danielle. I'll be seeing you. I eat at your restaurant all the time, so I'll be seeing you again. And I am so, so amazed by you, and you're so young. You're 28 years old, correct? Are you
Correct.
20?
Yes.
You've accomplished a lot for as young as you are. Congratulations. And I am
Well,
so
thank you.
determination and the passion and the joy that you have. Thank you so much. Well, thank you. And everybody, this ends this conversation, and you'll find more information in the links below about One Voice for Change and possibly about Danielle. And we look forward to our next video. So until next time, goodbye.